Right, so barely days after MPs united to dispute a report of Kenya sending a huge delegation to the US to attend a conference. So what we understand right now is that that number initially was at 85. What we do know right now is that Kenya may have sent a delegation of up to 90 individuals to attend that conference that was in Tennessee in the United States of America. So basically Kenya provided the largest number of participants at the National Conference of State Legislature in Nashville, Tennessee, at a time when President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration is proposing cuts on foreign travel as part of wide-ranging austerity measures. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga demanded that Parliament apologizes to Kenyans. Let's listen into what he had to say.
They said 85 delegates. The following day, there was a heated debate in Parliament. Members of Parliament threatened the national media that they're going to throw them out of Parliament for misreporting this information. What they did not tell the nation is how many delegates of Kenyans went to Nashville, Tennessee. Because I also have my sources where the nation got it. That, as a matter of fact, it is not 85, it was 90. Kenyans are there, when the United States, the host, has only got 9 people. And Nigeria, which has got the second largest, has got 20. Brazil has got 9 people. Japan sent 6. Portugal, 2, and Kenya 90. So including 2 speakers of the houses, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate. It's a shame. And the nation seemed to have recoiled because they were threatening the Parliament. Stand by the truth, say it as it is. The Parliament owes this country an explanation why they have to be sending bloated delegation to conferences which bring no benefit to our country. Many countries now are tired.
Okay, so the legislators attended the legislative conference whose agenda included sampling country music and getting inspirational talks from songstress Dolly Parton, and that includes members of parliament, senators, ward representatives, and parliament staff. So what exactly are we doing as a country in the face of austerity measures called out by the national government? At some point, President Uhuru Kenyatta himself just saying, we do not have enough money as Kenya. He said, mimi sina pesa. The National Assembly and the county governments, to be precise, are on a back and forth on the revenue allocation bill, with the National Assembly saying, look, we do not have money. So when that statement comes from the National Assembly itself, and then you have members of parliament, over 90, in a delegation of over 90, going for a conference, then serious questions need to be asked. And that is why we are talking about this evening. We will be speaking to Professor Alfred Omenya, who is a governance and governance policy analyst. Sir, thank you for joining us on The Big Story. We also have Irene Otieno. She's from the National Taxpayers Association. But right now, let me bring in our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna. Sophia, good evening. So at some point when this report came out, members of parliament were really agitated. Some even saying, let's close down the media center. This report is inaccurate. Raila Odinga there saying, I also have those figures, and those figures were inaccurate, and the media needs to stand its ground on this.
Good evening, Linda. What is telling about these figures and the dispute around just how many members of parliament attended this national conference of state legislatures is that at the end of the day, you're not getting the official figure. Attempts to reach the Speaker of the National Assembly, who's also the chairperson of the Parliamentary Service Commission, to get to the bottom of the issue as to just how many members were in this meeting in Nashville, Tennessee, were unfruitful. So they're not coming out clear as to how many members attended, but members of parliament will tell you that the 90 reported delegates, the highest number in this meeting, more than even Nigeria that had about 20, was drawn from not only the National Assembly, Senate, we're talking about county assemblies as well, and also support staff from parliament. So you have members from the Parliamentary Service Commission, whether it's personal assistance, we've heard even in some cases. But all of this is reportage that is yet to be substantiated in as far as getting those real figures. And this is really what puts Parliament in bad light, especially when it comes to matters of remuneration, of spending of this kind, because in as far as information is concerned, that's never direct. It's always about poking holes, reportage, and pushing the details, and until you try, hopefully, to get some of the information. This is coming. Remember, just recently, we were having a conversation around, again, the night allowances that members of parliament had awarded themselves after failure to secure the house allowances. The house allowances, which had been a push and pull, still is with the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, a matter that is in fact in court, because members of parliament have maintained that they should have the last word in as far as the housing allowance is concerned, saying that the court had pronounced itself concerning the deputy governors, and because they are state officers and members of parliament are state officers, then such ruling and the implication of the same would apply to them. Now, what's interesting, I am standing by to speak to Honorable Peter Kaluma, who's joining me just shortly. He will be with me in a moment. Linda, before he gets here, is Honorable Raila Odinga, as he was talking about this, also spoke about how he was in Dubai for a trip and he bumped into some MCAs from an unnamed county. He did not want to say which county assembly they were drawn for, but what he did say is that when he asked what they were doing in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, they indicated they were there for benchmarking, and that he said to them, because it is not a devolved system of governance in Dubai, in the UAE, then he was lost for why they would be benchmarking there. So these are just some of the issues. And in the past, there have been numerous reports about whether it's the county assemblies, the members of parliament, you name it, just getting into these very exorbitant, costly ventures. The control of budget, talking about 1 billion shillings being used by members of parliament and the PSC in just 9 months. This is just on foreign travel. So just speaking to the kind of a situation we are dealing with in a country grappling with death, in a with debt, a country that's grappling with high cost of living. And of course, I now have a member of parliament to talk a little bit more about this with. Peter Kaluma is Homa Bay Town member of parliament. Thank you for making time for me and us. Busy night for you, I know, but thank you for making time. Yes. So again, parliament on the spotlight, negatively when it comes to this spending. We're hearing about 90 MPs, of course, with other legislators drawn from across the devolution spectrum and support members of staff. Is this right? Is this morally acceptable in a country as Kenya, where we stand in our financial standing now?
It is commendable what the media is doing around elected leadership. Yeah, because each time, the media always reveals whether it is parliament at the national government or parliament at the county assemblies. These were not members of parliament from the National Assembly and the Senate alone. From the information I have, I hear they are being categorized as members of parliament, including honorable members in the county assemblies down there. That is not to say that we should not be more prudent in the manner we apply our resources. But I wanted to request that as we focus and push, Parliament also to reduce unnecessary expenditure. At the time we are very, strained economically. Let us also focus in other sectors of government. And I can confirm to you that the other sectors are even worse. And to me, the question is, do we really, look through these unnecessary expenditures during budget? Because there is a way in which I think we budget for them.
Right. And there sure are issues across the board, but tonight our focus is on this, because at the end of the day, when it's become now lip service to talk about austerity measures, because in fact they're not being applied. Members of parliament are responsible for the budget making process, but it appears Parliament budgets for this exorbitant expenditure when it benefits them. Are you not doing Wanjiku injustice?
Let me tell you, it may not be just in Parliament where we have these unnecessary budgets.
But we are focusing on Parliament today.
I'm happy you have revealed this. I personally doubt that more than 20 MPs are in the United States. I think what Parliament usually does is to, consider what is taking them out, and we should have an optimum number. I'm not saying that up to 90 members of Parliament can be in the United States for us.
That's insane, right?
That would be insane. And I can assure, Kenyans that I doubt that number. And that is why I'm insisting that, to me, that number includes, honorable members of county assembly.
But even if it includes them, it's still not right. 90
not right.
people?
No, the number is big. But I don't know what, the county assemblies across Kenya are sending. If you remember, we have about 47 county assemblies. Either way, this is not to justify, unnecessary expenditure. I can tell you that as a country we are collecting barely 1.4 trillion in the last financial year. It is now projected by Treasury that we'll collect 1.8 trillion. And we never meet that mark. We never meet the mark. Now, against a collection of 1.4 trillion, our debt repayment burden is at 800 billion in a year. It means to run the two levels of government and all government agencies, we have barely 500 billion. And this, I agree with you, should not be happening. These are necessary expenditures. When we have the kind of stalemate over division of revenue you see in the Supreme Court. Just remember, we are before the Supreme Court saying that as much as we may wish to give our counties, from which we come more, we don't have, that much to share between the national and, the county government. That is why I'm requesting, Sophia, that it is good to, reveal this. If there is a possibility of excessive, expenditure, let us reveal it. But I also urge you and our media to look at other arms of government. You'd get, worse cases there. And if we can do it that globally, and we'll be able to, save so much, which is, ideally, budgeted to be, spent unnecessarily.
Yeah. But this spending, honestly, is unwarranted, and bad behavior, as has been described by some analysts, is not just now. We've seen Parliament get itself in this sort of situations, eye of the storm, over and over again. And again, because they're in that powerful position of making laws, of also managing and preparing the budget. You remember, you were being criticized at the time when you went for the, World Cup?
Oh, that was a very useful one.
But still, at the end of the day, the question, when you say useful, many Kenyans will ask, so 90 legislators go to the USA for whatever, I'm hearing about learning about country music. How does it benefit Wanjiko? There's somebody going hungry tonight. There's somebody without clean water to drink.
Yes.
And then we're talking about going to watch World Cup.
Yes.
We're talking about going to listen to country music and whatever. It doesn't make sense. It's dishonesty.
I cannot agree with you more. But I also wanted to explain that, just as I've said, I doubt more than 20 members of Parliament. This is both in the Senate and the National Assembly are there. The other people, in my view, are, members of Parliament in our county assemblies across. But even that 20 may look, if you put it together, to be very big. But I tell you what, when you go out there are so many things which happen on the sidelines. In fact, invariably, what you need to look at is the terms of reference. I can tell you, like when we went to Russia, we cannot go to Russia to watch soccer. We're looking at opportunities in education, opportunities around energy, opportunities around infrastructure, and we had people from those very, committees. If you want to watch soccer better, you sit on a TV and watch it somewhere at home.
And what have those resulted to anything on the ground? Have you told your people, because I went for for World Cup in Russia, this is what has come as a result of it? And why during that time?
Let me shock you. When we went to Russia, I remember with the Committee on Education, and even the day I was being reported speaking to the media would have been candid. They would have showed me meeting all the students we have in Russia. At that time, those who were available were about 50 of them I was in a meeting with. And it was revealed to us that we have so many government-to-government scholarships, across. And we pushed, we've been able to push from the bare about 30, Kenyan students who are picking up those opportunities. We are now going over 180 because we extended it to about 300 scholarship opportunities. So what could be remiss is that maybe Parliament has not gone out there, to communicate that in that trip, hiding under, watching soccer, we now have up to 300, opportunities. So what I'm saying in short is that don't look at it in terms of just people being in the US. We want a trail complete with terms of reference and then deliverables and reporting when they come. And I want to urge Kenyans to look at the reports when they come. When you look at the one like from Russia on the spotting, by the way, we will not tell you much. But did you realize that I'm moving a motion on how the railway system across Nairobi should be working? And these are things we observed there and engagements which are already there.
Yeah.
Yes.
You say that, and it is important that perhaps what would lessen the concerns is that there is a wall-to-wall explanation that this is how much, this is who went, these are the capacities that were there deployed, and this is what was picked, and this is how it benefited Wanjiku. But finally, that all this is prone to abuse because members of parliament now said to be some of the best paid in the world, the Kenyan members of parliament, with the allowances at odds with the SRC, even the matter being in court. It looks like the greed, the name even MPs. Yes. You see where that comes from, because every other time it's one thing or the other around just pampering and getting what their lives better for members of parliament, but not for the people they were elected to serve. So it's not servant leadership, it is the servants serving the leader, quote unquote.
Sophia, I urge you to see the last report by the NTV, the Nation Media Group. And that report, which was broadcast live, confirms that the members of parliament in Kenya are the least paid. The least paid. We are paid below the members of parliament in Tanzania, paid below even the members of parliament in Uganda. And remember, it was reported across. When you go on a trip, let us look at the terms of reference and what is getting back. There is a way in which committees of parliament work. They could use the opportunity to travel together, but members of the committee being looked at together have their different, issues to pursue for the benefit of the country. I can assure Kenyans, not the Kenyan parliament, we are a very frugal and responsible team of leaders. And how I wish, Kenyans would just act even 5% what us as members of parliament, normally are. The country would have progressed greatly. Parliament is not overfunded. Parliament is not, excessive in their expenditure. When you travel, I know people could be thinking there is some money you're being given. There is nothing. It's just accommodation and your per diem. I mean, if it were about trips, then people like us would have gone. But we've not gone because the committees relevant to the trip was not sending people there. Yes.
Yeah, but still, there is a high affinity for trips in this country, even to benchmark on use of laptops.
Do I shock you? Sophia? In the last year, I never traveled out of the country once because I was saying I had a child who needed me more at home, was a candidate doing KCPE. This thinking that we have the alacrity to travel to get anything. I mean, Kenya is so beautiful. There is nothing much there. And I can tell you the situation we have in parliament is such that even if there was reason to travel, in parliament, a member of parliament can only travel once in a year, if that is possible. So I want to ask that, in as much as this thing could, stand people, let us interrogate and see the segments of parliament which went and ask them what their terms of reference are and what they deliver back. I can assure you, we don't have money in parliament which can be spent in such a way. Otherwise, we would not have the stalemates we are having currently. We are a very frugal, leadership.
Not quite frugal because you're disagreeing with the person who sets the money that should be paid. So you want to be the ones to decide. That's not frugal. That is being unilateral.
No, we are not in disagreement with SRC.
Yeah.
I asked a question before Parliament and then tell Kenyans to watch. SRC is preparing a report which will confirm to the nation that contrary to the reports going out there to put a wedge between elected leaders and the electorate, members of parliament are the least paid at their rank level. And so SRC has been ordered not only to come and table what the entire public service, earns, but also to rationalize them. By that I mean, explain to the country why a nurse should earn less than a member of parliament, and why a teacher earns so less, or a police officer. So we want justification. But I can tell you, SRC has become, a problem because it has failed to discharge its duties. And the problem we face as parliament is that when you want to move against them, people think you are seeking to secure. I've proposed before that why don't you reduce all these pays to below, 200,000. Not that you tell members of parliament reduce when you are taking others to millions. So we are a very frugal team, very good people, I can assure.
A frugal team is how Honorable Kaluma describes members of parliament. Thank you, sir, for making time for us. Honorable Peter Kaluma is the member of parliament, Homa Bay Town. At the end of the day, an important conversation, because as Honorable Kaluma was saying at the beginning, not only are we seeing these issues in parliament, but across the board. It's a conversation, but that keenly Kenyans must look to see where are there these excesses, because bottom line, it's about delivering service to Wanjiko. Taxes are being paid, but are Kenyans getting value for money? For instance, on this trip, so all of 1 billion being spent in 9 months, how have we benefited as a country is what many would ask, Linda.
Yeah, I love how he says it is a very frugal house. And the thing that comes out from Honorable Kaluma is basically saying, it's not just us, it happens everywhere else. So he specifically says, they're not just members of parliament, it's not just in parliament we have these expenditures. The media needs to look at other arms of government. So basically just passing back, yes, this happened, that we're not the only ones. But Sophia, thank you for that. So, and indeed, he's right. Just listening to me says it's not just members of parliament. And yes, it was not just members of parliament. So we had the speakers of both houses. We had minority and majority leaders. We had parliamentary individuals from Parliamentary Service Commission. We had senators in that team. We had members of National Assembly, who were about 14. We had county assembly speakers, county assembly staff, and 2 people from County Assemblies Forum. So basically, yes, he is right. It's not just a member of parliament. But be it as it may, 90, as opposed to Nigeria that had 20, Brazil 9, Japan 6, Uganda 3. Professor Alfred Omenya is joining me for this conversation. He's a governance policy analyst. We also have Irene Otieno from the National Taxpayers Association. Irene, let me begin with you. Listening into Honorable Kaluma, just basically saying it's not just us. And I can tell you there were not more than 20 members of parliament, and we're a frugal house.
Linda, thanks for having me. And indeed, I've just listened to what Mheshimiwa has said. And it's quite, I wouldn't say shocking. I think we are so used to the kind of nonsense that comes from some of our leaders. But what I'm particularly taking an issue with Linda is Kaluma returning it to the media and telling the media they should go out and find out who else was on that trip. But Parliament is the institution that should do oversight. So is the media now to take the place of Parliament, or what is the role of this Parliament? Oversight directly sits with them, so they cannot afford to delegate it. But we are honestly also shocked because we know there's no moral standing they have even to do that oversight, because what will they tell us? The second key issue for me, Linda, also with our leaders is you listen to Kaluma mentioning that we are not sure who went, who did not go, but just look at the level of scrutiny that the same house is demanding on the Punguza Mizigo signatures. So if we are demanding that level of specification and specificity on issues like that, and those are issues that will go contrary to their interest, which is reducing the number of leaders we have, there the threshold is quite high. But now when we are talking about simple things like, and you can check from the passports who went, who did not go, if at all, why don't they table these documents? It's the least that you expect from an institution that should oversight, an institution that should be held in high esteem, which for me, honestly, that is not what we as taxpayers, we as citizens view that leadership currently. And Linda, for you to tell us, or for Mheshimiwa to tell us that only 90 people went for that trip, he's really belittling 90 people, but who is funding? If it was Kaluma's money and his colleagues, we would not have any business complaining. But if they are going on that trip, whether it's 1 or 2, based on our resources, then we have a reason to worry. And we're expecting that that house tells us who are these 90 Kenyans, whether drawn from the National Assembly, whether drawn from county assemblies. That is not the issue. The issue is that can our budget support it? We are in debt currently. And you look at the finance bill and what Treasury seeks to burden the taxpayers with. We are now looking at online banking. Very many other ways to continue pampering this political class. Is this a burden that the taxpayer or a normal Kenyan citizen should be burdened with? So I think the discussions and even I keep saying the arrogance with which Kaluma and team continue to put out their positions. If at all they went out on something that adds value, there's a way you can state it with a bit of decorum that would be at least a bit palatable to the people who are paying for that trip. But for you to throw it back to the taxpayers, to demand that they tell you where will we access those documents? So for me, this institution has gone rogue, and Wanuna has mentioned it rightly. We are looking at the SRC issue, we are looking at the night allowances, and then this. They have honestly become bold and continue to be bold, and they ignore the citizens. But also now to speak to we as the people who fund this system, and we as the sovereign people, I think we have also taken a back seat and allowed the political class to really walk all over us. And Linda, I'd also just like to mention to Kenyans that remember that the recall clause, where we can actually recall these leaders, opened up in August 8. So that is something that we should. I know they've already passed, and look at the legislation. When you look at our leaders, you'll see the mischief. Linda, if you look at the demands they have put under the County Government Act and the Election Act on how you can recall them, completely ties our hands as citizens. So hold you on, look, and I'd say it's just a rogue institution for me.
I need Professor Omenya to be part of this conversation as well. Prof, so just listening into Kaluma and listening into Irene Otieno as well, Irene says, I mean, even if it's something that adds value, there needs to be a proper explanation about this. These are 90 individuals who are attending a national conference of state legislatures, 90, from the National Assembly, from the Senate, from the counties. Does it even make sense? Let's start from there.
Of course, it doesn't make sense at all. I mean, just from the perspective of proportionality, why 90? We were saying the US, that was the host, sent 12 delegates. The other big delegates also came from another rogue country. We cannot even compare ourselves with which is actually Nigeria. So Kenya actually had more delegates than literally all African countries combined. The second thing that Kaluma is not saying is what exactly were they doing there? This is a convention of state legislatures in the US. In fact, that's partly why the US Senate was not even there. The House of Representatives was not even there. Was just a handful of people. And even if you look at that program, a majority of it is basically, US oriented. In fact, all the speakers are all US and so on. And I think that's partly why the rest, of course, there was an invitation. And those who went there, it was just one or two delegates to be able to pick up one or two issues. But then Kenya sends 90. What were they doing there, really? You said 90 people to observe another country, run their country. Is that reasonable? Does it even make any sense? And Kaluma cannot see the problem with that at all. Then, of course, he comes and tells us that, in fact, we just never really understand. When they go to watch soccer, they discuss scholarships with the Russian government. Is that their role? The guy is a fool, honestly. That is not the role of Parliament. That's why we have the executive. That is why we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And then, of course, like as a little spoiled kid that they are, they come and tell you, okay, fine, we're doing badly, but check the other institutions, the other arms of government, they're even worse. So we are okay because we're doing things badly, but the others are even doing things worse. And I mean, it is just impunity. And Kaluma should know very well the role of Parliament and also the role of people, as Irene has already highlighted. Parliament and all institutions of government in Kenya actually work on delegated authority from the citizens who are the sovereign. Chapter 6 of our Constitution says quite clearly the principles of governance and leadership, and one of them is respect for the people. people do direct oversight of these institutions because we are the ones who put them in place. But Parliament somehow does not consider the people of Kenya to be sovereign. They do not consider the people of Kenya and the taxpayers as people who demand respect. They do not consider that transparency and accountability are fundamental principles of public finance management, so that Parliament can actually accuse media of trying to find out why they went on this ridiculous trip. And it's the same behavior that we have at county level, the county assembly, and in fact this time round they're all united against Kenyans. We had the Senate, which is rogue. We had this National Assembly, which is rogue. Then they were able to get some MRATs from the county assemblies to accompany them. And some of them actually, if you look at that list, some of them are people that cannot even be accounted for. We don't know exactly what it is that they do around at all. But honestly,
Prof,
right.
you know, the thing that stands out is even among all this, all blame seems to be heading the media way. I did mention at the beginning of the show at some point, members of Parliament were saying, perhaps we need to close the media center.
Yes.
This was inaccurate reporting until Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister, just said,
Correct.
I have the numbers.
Right.
These numbers are indeed accurate. And Raila Odinga said, it almost seems like these are leaders who don't care about the burden the taxpayers are bearing. So I want us to take a break. When we come back, we will listen to the President of the Republic of Kenya on the state of the country, just basically saying, this is where we are, this is it. So let's take that break now.